Good afternoon, everyone here at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Amherst and everyone joining us from all around the world on Zoom. I don't always get to say that. It is so exciting to be with you this afternoon to celebrate the double book release, kind of EdTick. We were going to have a party 2 years ago for the first book, and then we didn't get to have it because we weren't comfortable being together in person, and we knew that some of us would need to be in person for such a wonderful, happy, and auspicious event as this book release. So this is a party long delayed, and a great joy to be able to celebrate with Ed and with all of you the publication of both of these books. I'm Reverend Rachel Hayes. I'm the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Amherst. And it's wonderful that we can call Kate and Ed our members in this congregation. They give us so much and share so deeply of themselves. And I am happy that we can share that back with all of you today. So without any further ado, without another 2-year wait, let's get this party going.
My name is Joe Culin, and I have the pleasure of introducing my good friend Ed Tick to you. I've known Ed Tick for, about 30 years, and our lives are crisscrossed in a number of interesting ways. The first time was in an Albany seafood restaurant where mutual friends of ours invited us to have a meal together. Kate's smiling, I think, remembering it. And there I was introduced to him and his work about dream healing. It was the first book on that subject. It has since become a classic. And later I learned of other books that he has published, a book on War on the Soul and the Wounded Warriors, I should say. And these books also have become classics, but very interestingly, they're live now as ever because they're being translated into other languages right now, into Italian, Ukrainian, and possibly Russian. Is that right? Dealing with the soldiers in the wars, very relevant books. So at the time you lived in Albany, I lived in Saratoga Springs. I heard of Ed's work as a psychotherapist working with veterans and how he dedicated his life to working with veterans with PTSD. And because of that, when I became a producer of a television program called Global Spirit, the theme of the program was forgiveness and healing. I instantly thought of Ed as the perfect person to be interviewed on that program. And that program highlighted the fact that Ed, for a number of years, was taking Vietnam veterans to Vietnam on a kind of pilgrimage there to ask for forgiveness from the villagers there. And this film is very touching, very moving experience, and it can be seen on YouTube, should you care to see it. Global Spirit, program on forgiveness and healing. So another time our paths crossed was in Delphi, Greece, when I was there on a program for my magazine, Parabola Magazine, and Ed and I crisscrossed there at a restaurant, and he had just completed a spiritual pilgrimage, taking people to the sacred healing sites in Greece. So again, our paths crossed for the fourth time, I would say, when I moved from New York to Northampton about 7 years ago. And who should I discover, one reason or another, but Ed Tick had moved from Albany to Belchertown. So instantly we connected again and discussed things, and I asked Ed what he was up to, and he said, I'm thinking about writing another book. And he asked me what I was up to, and I said, well, I'm a part-time literary agent. And we looked at each other and said, mm-hmm. Well, anyway, some years later, we have managed to find a very good publishing house, Inner Traditions, for Ed's book on this, and a future book that he's doing on the sacred island of Poros, which he's in the middle of writing of. So I was thinking about making an introduction to Ed and looking at him. It's difficult to get a handle because I'm looking at a man I would say has led 3 full lives. You're looking at 3 people, both as a therapist working with, dedicating his life to working with veterans, and a person who takes people on spiritual pilgrimages to Greece and to Vietnam. He's an author, a writer, a poet, and he's a dedicated father, husband, and grandfather, most recently. So he's quite a remarkable man, and it's an honor to introduce him. I don't want to take more time to say good things about him. Let him speak for himself. Everyone. So, thank you.
Come on, help me. Hi. Good afternoon. That's better. We need each other's energy. We need each other's energy very much. I'm honored to be with you today. Thank you. For those of you who come here in the sanctuary, thank you very much. A few of you traveled far and wide, and I'm having some reunions with dear old friends and companions, so especially thank you for that effort. For everybody on Zoom, bless you, thank you. We're so glad you're here. And as Reverend Rachel said, this is an international gathering. We know we have some people from, what I've heard is Ukraine, Greece, Sweden, and Mexico. So we greet all of you, and any other countries we're leaving out, I'm sorry. Canada, yes, Canada's here, yes. Beth Marie in Canada, hello. And anybody else. So in every language with our hearts and souls, we greet you and bless you and thank you for being here. And it's very exciting that this is an international gathering. May, in our own small way, may we contribute together to peace and healing for all, for our whole planet. So I want to thank you, Reverend Rachel, and our congregation, Unitarian Universal Society of Amherst, for hosting and sponsoring this event. Thank you. And Rachel was correct that we're celebrating 2 books' birthdays today, even though one is a little older. One is brand new, but we're celebrating them both. Rachel and our congregation, thank you very much. And Joe Cullen, who you heard speak and introduce me. Joe is a wonderful man and my literary agent and has been a servant of spirituality in publishing and disseminating the mythic and spiritual wisdom of the world. And that's been his life's work. And so I thank you and bless you for that too. I publicly thank my wife and partner, Kate Delstead, whom you all know. She's not only a wonderful wife and partner, but we've been in this work together for 40 years for our entire marriage. So anything that I present today, Kate also gets credit for learning, developing, doing this healing work, and making all the sacrifices necessary. So bless you and thank you, Kate. Okay, and I do especially want to thank the Hermans, not only for helping today, but in our congregation, the Hermans and the Rogers especially have been extraordinary friends and helpmates and companions in the war healing work that we're all concerned with. So I publicly honor and thank you too. Besides our great congregation that does all kinds of good things. Okay. So we have a double book launch today, and the book that didn't get celebrated last year is Coming Home in Vietnam. It's a compilation of the 20 years of poetry that I've been writing as Kate about 10 of the times, and me for 20 years have been leading healing and reconciliation journeys to Vietnam. So that came out a year ago, and we're catching up to it today. And then just about a month ago, my new book, Soul Medicine, came out. Soul Medicine. It's called Soul Medicine, Healing Through Dream Incubation, Visions, Oracles, and Pilgrimage. It's a long, complicated subtitle. This is about my healing work in Vietnam. This is about my healing work in Greece. So we're going to take you very briefly on journeys to these two countries today. I want to start with a very brief prayer, and I'm sharing something personal too. This little plaque is over my desk at home, and I look at it every day as I write, as I work, as I do my therapy work. And it's a very simple prayer that was written in 1506. This is the prayer of Christian Plaatman, who was an Antwerp publisher, who was one of the first people with a printing press and printing the Hebrew Bible and disseminating it over Europe and getting people who could never read before a Bible. So when he first printed the Hebrew Bible in 1506 in Antwerp, he recited this prayer, and it's become mine as well. Blessed by God, who has not removed mercy from us, but has enabled us to finish this book without misery or misfortune. Writing books is really hard work, folks. And there's lots of misery and misfortune along the way, and lots of sacrifice. And if you listen to Joe and I talk about the modern publishing world, it's getting even more miserable, even more difficult, even more oppressive toward creative people and toward the general population. So I am really blessed that these books are finished and they're published, and whatever wisdom is in it is giving it to the world, and I can relieve it, take it out of my backpack and turn it over to the world. So thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit, for giving me this task in life and these blessings to endure the work and deliver some goodness to us. All right, so lots of people who are here today in person and by Zoom know me and my work, and some of us have worked together. There are many veterans joining us, and some who have gone back to Vietnam with me, and some people have traveled to Greece with me, and some people from those countries. So the two books we're birthing today, very briefly, they each report and record 20 years of work that I've done in each country. I've been leading healing journeys to Greece since 1995, every year. I'll be leaving on Wednesday for my 23rd healing journey to Greece. And I've been leading healing journeys to Greece to Vietnam since 2000. So I've done that 19 times. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So each book is 20 years or more of work. My book, Coming Home in Vietnam, is 20 years of the poetry that I've been writing while I'm leading the healing journeys through Vietnam. And the book in Greece is in prose, but it's also the record of 20 years of healing, of research and practice, and studying the ancient traditions in order to bring the wisdom of the ancient healing ways and of cultures that are more united, healthier, older, wiser than ours, and to collect their wisdom, learn from them, and bring all of that forward for our use today. So you hear that I lead healing journeys to overseas, and that is one of my main forms of healing work. I practice pilgrimage and cultural immersion. These are deep healing tools that can bring, that are ancient tools and can bring extraordinary dimensions of healing, growth, and transformation to anybody who participates. We all know that pilgrimage is ancient. The Neolithic people, when they wandered to find good homes and good sacred places, were practicing pilgrimage. The Odyssey is a pilgrimage of Odysseus' 10-year voyage on the way home from war. Canterbury Tales are pilgrimage, of course. So pilgrimage is a world tradition, and it means traveling long and deep and far and making many sacrifices and meeting ordeals along the way to learn the wisdom that we need and to seek especially spiritual guidance and help for the questions in life that we can't heal ourselves or we need guidance to fulfill our destinies. So I'm going to take you on very brief pilgrimages to the two countries by giving some reading samples from each one, and you'll hear some stories. I do lecture and teach this material a lot. I'm not going to be doing that today. I'm going to be sharing readings and stories that hopefully take you to those countries for a little while and inspire you. Please stay around. We are having a raffle for a free signed book. We'll have a social hour afterwards and some book sales. Books are for sale. And Kate and I also, as long as we've been going to Vietnam, we've been doing major charity projects over there. So we've built 2 schools. We help Agent Orange victims. We've built homes for the destitute and homeless people there. Since the pandemic, we've been running a Mother Pig project. So we are partnered with a very impoverished village in the Central Highlands, Duy Tan, and nothing else works there anymore because climate change and other challenges are so severe. We supply them with pregnant mother pigs, pregnant sows. As they said, the water buffalo used to give us gets swept away in the storms. The chickens drown. Our homes are falling apart. But pigs can handle anything. They just roll in the mud, and they're loving, and they're loyal, and they're friendly. So since the pandemic, we've supplied 36 mother pigs to their families, and we're raising for more. So if you can help with that, I'd appreciate that very much. So with that, and the pigs are in Vietnam, let's go to Vietnam. So my first book, I will read some poems and a few stories from Vietnam. And I hope they will show you a bit of the Vietnamese people, the beauty of the countryside, and how really deep and profound healing can happen from these journeys. And I always like to begin with prayers. So this first poem is called Praying. It actually is, in just 2 stanzas, a story of a Massachusetts Vietnam veteran who was in very severe combat and then went back to Vietnam with me. Just briefly, you just need to know the background of the story. On his 19th birthday, he was in a hideous battle in Tay Ninh province where he and his units survived a suicide attack. They killed 300 enemy soldiers. 300, and many of his comrades were killed as well. After the battle, they dug a huge grave and just bulldozed all the bodies into a mass grave. Our veteran was tortured by that memory and had nightmares of it and wanted to go back to Vietnam to return the grave to the Vietnamese people and reconcile and put those spirits to rest. So we did that. So the poem Praying. The first stanza is what happened to him during the war, in the battle, and the second stanza is what happened when we went back and gave the grave back to the Vietnamese people. Praying. Never in my life did I pray so hard as that day at the smoking bottom of this mountain, among giant boulders and fallen trees, when the enemy overran our wire and sprouted like berserk rice stalks, no farther away than the length of my rifle, and our muzzle holes became God's wrathful eyes. Never in my life did I pray so hard until today, on the cloud-crowned top of this mountain, among smiling statues and wafting incense, when their children took my hands and called me uncle, and monks bowed to me as if I were a saint, and I embraced their dead as my true brothers, and God's loving eyes gazed through my torn and mending heart. He was afraid he'd be arrested or put in prison. The Vietnamese people embraced him, loved him, put their babies in his hand, asking for his blessing, and he fell in love with a Vietnamese woman. And I'm very happy to tell you that he just lives about an hour east of us now, and he lives in both countries. He's happily married. He supports the family in Vietnam, and they live in both countries. And what a way to end a war, by bringing our peoples together in love and peace and reconciliation. So I'd like to give you a peek of the Vietnamese land, just so you can imagine how extraordinarily beautiful it is. So this is on the Mekong River, and the poem is simply called Hyacinths. There are huge clumps of water hyacinths that we see floating down the river in the morning when the tide goes out, and then they float back up the river at night when the tide comes back in and pushes them up. Some of these hyacinths travel scores of miles every day. So this is called Hyacinths. Hope you can please imagine it with me. Did I not see you, green hyacinth clump, tugging your baby shoots and trading your bearded roots as you floated to the sea under the blazing midday sun? You return now, a black silhouette, a thief in the night, floating upriver to the place of your birth. The journey ends where it began. The journey begins at its end. You and I are the single breath, sucked in, sucked out, in, out. We are the breath of the sea. And it's not only a very, very beautiful landscape for all of us to get lost and found in, but the landscape itself, the ecology, the environment, heals our veterans as well. So here's another poem from the Mekong Delta. This poem is called Nak San, which is a Vietnamese name for a giant night-singing cicada-like insect that lives in the jungle. It's about the size and shape of a large locust, and it has a very, very loud clicking sound. It sings all night. So the poem is called, named for the crickets, and imagine our veterans sleeping in the jungle during the war and now going back to sleep there again. I walk through a darkness as thick and wet as hot black soup. Distant riverboats sputter, distant stars prickle. Out of this liquid midnight, a dog stirs, yaps 3 times as I pass, then fades back into shadows. In our bunkhouse, old vets sleep. Nak Sang's song once told them that no enemy was near. If they heard the crickets, then that means nobody was walking in the jungle sneaking up on them. Nak Sang once told them no enemy was near. All is silent now, except for their snores and the constant sound of our single tree locust, screeching, 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 prying the rusty hinges of our hearts open again on this invisible, eternal river. Tonight, they are safe to dream. When we go back together, some of our vets sleep again through the night for the first time since the war. They come home here and their PTSD is so severe, and we don't bring them home well or correctly. But we go back to Vietnam, and the Vietnamese people are so welcoming and loving and friendly and say, you don't have to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. You were a good warrior serving your country. That's what warriors are supposed to do. It's only the politicians and the corporations that made you come here that made the mistake, but not you. We honor you as good, honorable, spiritual warriors. And if you couldn't come home in America, then come home in Vietnam. And we do. They do, and we all do. So this is a good story and a good lesson. This next poem is called Point of View, and this poem is our veteran's favorite poem of all that I've written about this experience. And now let me tell you the background. We were also in the Mekong Delta. We met with an elder warrior named, his nickname was Mr. Tiger, Nguyen Tam Ho. This man was at war for 25 years against the Japanese in World War II, the French during that war, and then us Americans during the American War. He was never in the military. He was always militia, Viet Minh, Viet Cong. So he paid his own way. And he's a beautiful, he died about 2 years ago, but he was a beautiful, beautiful elder. We met with him every year. He hosted us at his little compound on the Mekong Delta. He devoted his life to helping reforest the Delta. And when we were with him, our veterans would say, "You must feel so guilty, Mr. Tiger. You must be torn apart by survivor's guilt. So many of your people died. The war was right here. The destruction was here." And Mr. Tiger would just smile and say, "Oh, my brothers, no, I'm sad. I'm not guilty. I'm sad. I'm not guilty." "But don't you have survivor's guilt?" our vets would say. And he answered, "No. And I don't want you to have survivor's guilt either." Learn, he would say. "How not? How can we overcome our survivor's guilt?" our veterans asked. And Mr. Tiger answered, "Perhaps bullets are the messenger of karma. You're looking through your human eyes and judging yourself. We don't do that. Learn to see from the point of view of the bullet. What happens in a battle is nobody's fault. We are all put here by the karma of life, karma of the world, and it forces us together into terrible conditions. And then it's somehow the universal forces that decide who lives and who dies. Not you, not me. We're all caught in this maelstrom together. So please release your guilt and learn to see from the point of view of the bullet." So our veterans really take that to heart, and Kate and I in our healing work use this lesson all the time. And I wrote this poem called Point of View, which we use in our healing work, and shows the transformation out of survivor's guilt into a new, more spiritual, universal point of view. From the point of view of the bullet, one will live, one will die. From the point of view of a man, my life is his death. From the point of view of the bullet, you took the right step, he the wrong. From the point of view of a man, his death should have been mine. From the point of view of the bullet, fate is a swift, straight shot. From the point of view of a man, fate is a fickle whore. From the point of view of the bullet, I am a servant of destiny. From the point of view of the man, destiny is a greedy whore. From the point of view of the bullet, his destiny was complete. From the point of view of a man, he left me to live for two. From the point of view of the bullet, you survived to finish your mission. From the point of view of a man, I wish I had died instead. From the point of view of the bullet, your service was not your mission. From the point of view of a man, my time in hell was enough. From the point of view of the bullet, life wants more from you. From the point of view of a man, tell me what I must do. From the point of view of the bullet, live for all who died. From the point of view of the man, too many lamenting ghosts. From the point of view of the bullet, their voices are now your voice. From the point of view of a man, their voices are now my voice. We learn to speak for all who can't speak for themselves any longer. We learn to tell everyone's stories, and we learn to unite them into one universal story that we all share so that we can all care and tend each other and bring healing through love. So, Reverend Rachel's been focusing on interconnectedness, interrelatedness in our world and between all of us. And we achieve that in both these countries, Greece and Vietnam, profoundly. They're both communal countries. They both continue to practice deep interrelatedness between all people and between us and the earth. And in Vietnam, it's especially beautiful with the degree to which people bond and love each other. And so Kate and I have an adopted goddaughter in Vietnam. So we are Bo and Meh, mother and father and mother to her. And we've shared many adventures and stories with her as well. I'm not reading difficult war stories today. We all have enough of that in the news every day. So I'm bringing more joyous healing stories. I have been with Nyok in My Lai, and we went through profound visions of the dead and healing there, but this is different. This poem is called Language Lessons, because we're trying to learn each other's language, and it's fun and funny and loving. So one night we're in Hue reading Ho Chi Minh's prison poetry out loud together, trying with both languages. So this is called Language Lessons, and it's for Nyok. The broad sky and the wide river fade into a single blanket of darkness. The steaming air cools. Outside our window, the neon lights and blaring music of a reborn town awaken. We pull the blanket over our toes and snuggle into the deepening dark. We open our volume of prison poetry written by Bak Ho while encased in hunger and gloom. We read of toil, of no water, of lost teeth and lost friends. But we laugh as she cannot pronounce Z, and I choke on nya. Together in the small, quiet room, our prison bars are thrown open. Dawn bursts. We share a family blanket that is all we need to chase the shadows of history from our hearts. And of course, we also listen to and witness the Vietnamese stories, what happened to them during the war and since. I am happy to affirm again that in Vietnam, they do not have chronic wartime post-traumatic stress disorder as we have here. So we've learned very much from them that it's not necessary, that it's very much caused by the culture we live in and our failure to tend our veterans and bring them home correctly. And the Vietnamese did that correctly with their own people during the war and since, and do it with ours. And again, welcome our veterans to come home in Vietnam. And we also witness and collect their stories because we Americans don't know what happened to them during the war or since, though they watch all our Vietnam War movies. They're teenagers and college students. They know all our 60s music. They sing them to us. They sing, their college students gather and sing Where Have All the Flowers Gone in English to our group of veterans. And so sweetly and with so much love that we all burst into tears. This poem is one of the stories of what happened to them during the war that I learned from them. So we all remember the demilitarized zone. The Ben Ha River runs through the central Vietnam, and so on the north was North Vietnam, on the south, South Vietnam. And families and friends and villages were split in half by that. This is a story of what happened to one family on the demilitarized zone during the war, when part of the family was on the southern side, part of the family was on the north, and they couldn't communicate. All during the war, you'll hear what happened. So, This is written, like a lot of my poems, in first person from the Vietnamese point of view. So imagine the Vietnamese telling us this story. The kite. Monsoons of burning metal scalded our next harvest. We could not eat ash. I saw my family across the river. Their rice was ash also. We could not meet, we could not help each other. We could not even send a message through the blazing muzzles lining both banks. A postcard took a year and traveled through half a dozen countries just to say, I am alive, I miss you, please be well. Finally, I made a rice paper dragon. Finally, I tied it to a long string, hung a note from its talons. Dragon floated on currents of air above the brown waters. Dragon dodged and ducked burning missiles. Dragon floated above my parents' hut. Then I cut the string. Dragon tumbled home. In this way, though the powers of the world denied us, dragon, wind, and I wished my weary, aging parents, Chak Moon Nam Moy, Happy Tet, Happy New Year. So, those are just a few of the stories and poems from Vietnam. And now, for a few minutes, I want to take you to Greece. The subtitle of my book is Healing Through Dream Incubation, Visions, Oracles, and Pilgrimage. And all of these practices, I'll explain dream incubation in a minute, but big dreams, visions, oracles, and pilgrimage, and miraculous events are all forms by which the invisible, the non-rational, the transpersonal, the spiritual communicates with us, and we can achieve very deep and lasting healing experiences by encountering these. Most of us know that psychedelics, ketamine, mind-altering drugs are becoming very popular for healing now because people are hungry for the spiritual, hungry to connect with the invisible, the other side, the irrational, and we don't do that in our culture very well, and we don't have structured rituals for doing it. Other cultures today, and especially in the past of other times and places, have had them. And as Reverend Rachel was telling us this morning, we must respect and worship and connect with our ancestors. So we do that here and in important ways. In my work in Vietnam and in Greece, we go way back to working with the old ancestors. So I've been working with the ancestors of modern Western medicine and psychology for many decades. And I'm going to recite a 3,000-year-old prayer for you now. Well, I'll recite it in English. But this is the Homeric hymn to Asclepius. Asclepius was the god of healing in ancient Greece. And very briefly for now, the ancient Greek Asclepian healing tradition is the root of Western medicine and psychology. There's so much wrong, inadequate with our healing practices today that I'm going back to our ancestors of healing and the roots of healing in the Western world to learn from them, gain their wisdom, and use their practices for healing today. So this is the Homeric hymn to Asclepius, who brought healing, dreams, and visions. And it's, as I said, 3,000 years old. Doctor of our ailing, Asclepius, I begin your praise. You're the son of Apollo. You were awakened through the mother of light of the fertile plains. She was the daughter of the mountain king. Asclepius, you are great to humanity. You relieve our cruel suffering. And thus I welcome you, Master, by this prayer I beseech you. So this was used thousands of times in the ancient world, maybe tens of thousands of times. Carl Jung taught us that it is not ideas, but experience that heal us. And it is specifically the experience of the numinous. Somehow the cosmos reaches into us and touches us and heals us and transforms us. And immersion in both the Greek and the Vietnamese tradition can achieve this. And specifically, the Greek tradition facilitated these big experiences of a big dream, what Carl Jung called a big dream, not our little everyday dreams that come from our personal lives or our personal unconscious, but a big dream that has spiritual or universal or archetypal content in it, where we experience the powers of nature or the divine penetrating us and healing us, or telling us how to heal ourselves. So this is really the origin of medicine in the Western world. This tradition lasted for 2,000 years, and Hippocrates was a son and grandson of Asclepian priests who practiced this tradition, and he just made it scientific. He scientized spiritual medicine that had been going on for thousands of years. So, I'm not going to talk much about that. I'm going to give you a few experiences, read a few experiences that I had in Greece that demonstrate these. Miracles are possible. They still happen. They still exist. Things we can't explain that seem to break the laws of nature. So I have an example of a vision, of an oracle, a dream incubation to share with you. So you'll have one small taste of what each of these healing experiences. Okay. We are in a tiny village called Sfakia on the coast of southern Crete. It's really small. It's only 2,000 people live there. And there's only one access road through the mountains, and then one small road that goes along the southern coast, along the mountainside. And that's where we are. So imagine yourself in a very, very remote place that's treacherous to get to and very small, and pretty much isolated from the rest of the world. So I'm leading 6 pilgrims on a hike, a late night hike in this thick darkness down the remote road. So I lead 6 of my pilgrims on a late night hike westerly down the remote road. It's darker than most of us have ever seen. The mountains tower over us like rugged giants against a star-studded black curtain of sky. The waves crash against the coast below. We walk slowly together, making sure our footfalls land squarely on the blacktop. A half hour into our hike, we're bumped by aggressive four-leggeds coming down off the mountain, mingling in and scattering our human group, then continuing down the road or over its steep side. We're in a flock of krikri, the wild mountain goats that have become Crete's totem. It's believed they were brought here about 7,000 years ago during Minoan civilization, have long since gone wild, and are now the only population of such wild goats in the world. The krikri, with their long, swept black horns, furry faces, and long beards, bump and jostle us, letting us know it's their home and we're just the visitors. Some of my group giggle and stroke them, others are cautious and step gingerly through the traffic jam. Are we meeting an embodiment of Pan, the goat god? We pass through the goats as if through guardians of a boundary. We walk an hour and are in deep darkness with no lights but the blazing stars above. We come to a cleft in the rock and a precipitous curve in the road. One of my travelers said, "We have gone far enough. She feels like we're in the distant cosmos. She'd like to pause, rest, and return." Another one addresses me in the darkness. "You told us," she says, "that this would be a spiritual journey and we might experience strange events and witness mysteries. You insisted Greece is both sacred and beautiful. I see beauty everywhere, but I haven't experienced anything spiritual. What did you mean? Where is it?" I reply, be careful of what you say, the gods may be listening. Now you can laugh. At that very second, as the last word drips from my tongue, a huge meteor bursts out of the southern horizon. It screams over our head, a molten fireball burning red and gold and with a long yellow-red tail trimming back toward the sea. The meteor shoots right over our heads, lower and larger than any celestial object any of us has ever seen. It disappears over the mountain crest by our side. Oh, mutters one traveler. They heard, whispers another. We walk slowly back towards Sfakia in stricken silence. The meteor's appearance reduced our entire group, including the non-spiritual member, to awe and wonder. It projected us into a domain for which we have no adequate explanations. In ancient times, we might have said that Zeus threw a lightning bolt, or Poseidon a fireball, Athena a flaming spear, or Hephaestus an ember from his forge to awaken us, challenge us, show us that there is an invisible, it responds to us, and we are somehow interwoven in the logos in ways that we cannot see but that can be revealed. Could this have been a random or accidental event? That meteor would have been created millennia ago by some incredibly distant cosmic explosion at just the right millisecond for it to soar through the galaxies for tens of thousands of years to arrive over our heads at just that instant that my words sounded. That scientific explanation is nearly inconceivable and still would have rendered this event synchronistic, because somehow the universe would have collaborated for the meteor to appear at just that moment. So, what explains the vision? I still see the meteor flying over the heads of all of us, doubting Thomases of the modern world. So, that's one of the types of visions that is possible when we put ourselves in strange places away from modern civilization and in sacred space. So we get visions. We receive oracles. My groups go to Delphi, the home of the famous Delphi oracle, and to other oracle sites. And I'm going to read you an oracle story in a moment that happens somewhere else. But before I do, I'm also happy to share that my beloved Kate, whom you know, her book is here today as well. And she's led half these overseas journeys with me. And Kate's spirituality is most deeply connected to our Mother Earth. So I'd like to share with you Kate's poem that she wrote at Delphi about that sacred site. Not looking for oracles, but looking even more deeply into our most eternal spiritual connections. So this is Delphi by Kate Dalsted. Below the cliff, above the abyss, in the crevice of the mother, around a mountain bend, it looms for all to see with unbelieving eyes. Columns and temple chiseled with skill and longing, strewn in ruin along the sacred way. Friezes of horses and heroes, statues of soldiers and sphinx, rubbled remains of long ago pilgrims who came from afar by mule and cart, on foot and on cane, searching for God and destiny. We come still, now in buses and cars, with chattering French children seeking photos, and curious Japanese who are called unknowing to this sacred cradle to wander and wonder among themselves. Yet loudest of all are the birds, singing a welcome to the morning light and the dewdrops on the pine trees. Hawks float in circles above the highest cloud, searching into crannies and back around again, guardians, watching, waiting, reminding. When the gates are closed and the people gone, all that has ever been is the mountain. The temple is but a landslide. All that is alive since the beginning of time all that is God, all that we need, the mountains of Delphi. I do get very emotional when I read and remember. And it's good for us to cry, so I'm good. I hope you're good with it. So oracles. So there we are on Crete, on southern Crete. No, we're in Heraklion, on the capital of Crete. And one of our veterans, his nickname was Magoo. He's a truck driver during the war, but very nearsighted, bless him. Magoo claimed to be an atheist. We're in Heraklion, the capital of Crete, and we went to the grave of Nikos Kazantzakis. Some of us know of him. He's the guy who wrote Zorba the Greek. He's famous for that. Okay, so now our heads are nodding. He was a great writer. He was the greatest 20th century writer Greece gave us. He would have won the Nobel Prize for Literature, except the church stopped it. Some of us read or saw The Last Temptation of Christ. A few of us. Okay, that's his book, and the church was not his friend after that. He's honored by the Greek people. He was born in Heraklion, and he's buried in their 14th century old walls that surround the city. And we went there to honor Kazantzakis, to study him, and it's a very important spiritual and cultural site for the Cretan people. So listen to what happened with Magoo. So we were at the gravesite with Magoo. Due to war injuries, he has severe back problems and walks with pain. He then identifies as an atheist because war crushes spirituality. He wants to believe in something more. He wants to find purpose and destiny, but combat taught him vigilance. Magoo relies only on what he can see and hear. Our group lingers. We wander the bastion between stray cats and rose hips. We sit by the grave, tell stories, and read aloud from Kazantzakis' writings. Magoo feels restless. He walks away from the group, stands by the low stone walls, contemplates the mountains and the sea. He feels stricken by, in his words, the simplicity yet intensity of the region. He was searching for more immersion in life from a great view. But he felt confused by some of our group expressing spirituality and connection. He left our group, descended the broad stone stairway alone. The day is hot and sunny, the air is still and heavy. Magoo reaches the cracked sidewalk below and stands there alone in the bright sunlight. The air is completely still, but suddenly a breeze stirs up. A slip of paper flies through the air and strikes Magoo in the face. The breeze holds the paper against him. He's tempted to tear it off his face and throw it away, but he sees there's handwriting on the paper in Greek. Then the Greek, our group joins him with some Greek traveling companions. Confused, instead of throwing the paper away, Magoo hands it to us and asks us to translate the writing. It reads, "We have saved for you a star in the firmament. Be careful. We have saved for you a star in the firmament. Be careful." Handwritten in Greek, and slapped him right across the face. This occurred in 2014. Magoo reports that he felt refreshed and invigorated at a time when he was depleted. He previously had no spiritual beliefs and had resisted them, but in his words, this cracked my denial. He couldn't rationalize or explain the experience. He had felt unworthy and important like so many veterans, like he did not matter and was nothing but cannon fodder. Now, literally slapped in the face with an oracle, he contemplated his star in the firmament. He could not help but feel, in his words, whether on earth or in the afterlife, my existence and being do have meaning. Later, we discussed the breeze that blew the oracle. The breeze was air, breath, wind, and the breeze was divine spirit slapping Magoo in the face with this declaration that indeed, rather than being war's waste, he is important and has purpose here. Magoo still feels confused by the event he can't explain, but he accepts it as real and synchronistic. He reports that he felt peaceful and pain-free after the oracle. It cracked the world open for me, he says. I felt vulnerable. It was beyond my comfort zone, philosophy, and any experiences I ever had. So I didn't know how to experience it. But since that experience, Magoo has felt is provided with a larger identity to transform his identity from disabled veteran to world warrior and citizen. It set him up, which he's done since then, to pursue his bucket list of traveling all over the world to embrace veterans from all over the world as his sisters and brothers. Now we joke about his nickname. Nearsighted Mr. Magoo has been given vision. Now he works to restore the universal warrior archetype that has been restored for him. And since then, Magoo has gone to college. He's traveled all over the world. He genuinely has visited at least half the countries of the world, and he meets with veteran groups there, and he preaches the universal brotherhood and sisterhood of everyone who has served. There are no enemies. We're all brothers and sisters who survived the same hell. So that's another kind of healing that happens there unpredictably and through magic. Okay, excuse me a second, where are you? Okay, brief healing story. Jung taught what we used to know about what we used to call gods have become our diseases. Everything that used to be in the universe and the way the universe used to interact with us have become this pathologies and diseases and diagnoses. So in my work, we reverse it. What's the God in the disease? What are the universal dimensions that are working in you and through you? Hippocrates, the first scientific physician, said, all illness begins in the soul and ends in the body. Tragically, our modern doctors are physicians who only treat, for the most part, only treat the body and practice symptom control. So we go to doctors and we get medications thrown at our symptoms. That's not healing. It doesn't heal the original condition and what causes the symptoms. But in these traditions, we go back to the origins and seek the origins of the illness. So I've done that many times, and there are many stories in my books about this, but I'll just share with you a brief one. In Australia, a friend and colleague of mine, Asher Packman, uncovered the God in his disease. Asher was a successful corporate executive when he was diagnosed with a rare, chronic, and terminal blood cancer. At first, he thought something was wrong with his body and he sought mechanical cures. Over time, he realized that the cancer was, his words, my body's attempt to initiate my own process of deep healing. Asher's form of cancer grows too many platelets. He traced the story back to his early childhood when he needed extensive protection and held his own story too close. Over time, this grew into his body overprotecting itself by the overproduction of platelets to the point of threatening his life. Asher's cancer genes look in opposite directions and negatively regulate each other. Because they look in opposite directions, his cancer cell is named Janus, after the two-faced Roman god. These factors provided Asher the clues he needed to deal mythopoetically with his condition. His story became, his words, my story became polluted and no longer served. He quit the corporate world. He studied mythology and poetry. He became a scholar and a philosopher, and he had gifts as a medium that he had never developed until the cancer made him quit his job and seek another form of meaning and livelihood. And by now he has learned to live compatibly with Janus, the God power in his cancer. He lives on the threshold now Like Janus, simultaneously looking into the past and the future, living in time and timelessness, realizing that destruction and creation are two parts of the same process, and carefully regulating how he protects and controls his life's challenges. He emerged from his ordeal healed, well, and he is well. He and I just spoke the other day. And he says, he carries the wisdom, his words. We need to restore our need to restory ourselves, to look at our stories and tell ourselves our life stories differently that reveal the way we were wounded and the way we can heal ourselves. So that's just one small peek at how these practices work. Okay, I'll give you one more story from Greece to show you again how, and this also shows you where medicine and psychology originally came from. And then I have some time for discussions for question and answer. And then I have a couple of closing prayers, and then we can go party. Okay, so this story also happened on Crete. We do the process what's called dream incubation in ancient Greece. It's analogous to Native American vision questing, where Native Americans go into the wilderness alone for 1 to 4 days after a long period of preparation, and they fast and they pray and they do nothing but open themselves to nature and the universe and watch for dreams and visions and strange events like turtles on mountaintops. We had that discussion before our event. Strange events like meeting turtles on mountaintops that give them a transformed vision and tell them the universe knows they're there and gives them big teachings. So in the ancient Greek tradition, it was called dream incubation. People went to holistic healing sanctuaries like we have today, like Omega or Esalen Institute, except they didn't pay. And they didn't go just for one treatment modality, they got them all. So they got acupressure and nutrition and gymnastics and Greek tragedy performances and poetry readings and astrology readings and exercise routines and every form of holistic healing. And they got them all, and they were able to stay in the sanctuaries for as long as they needed. And that wasn't the healing. They did the holistic practices until they had some dream or vision or message that said, now it's time to go to meet the God of healing, Asclepios. And they had separate buildings that were for no other purpose but to go on a dream quest. So after lots of preparation and holistic healing, they would go into the dream healing chambers and they would sleep on a clinic. Our word clinic comes from this tradition, the klinikos, which was a dream healing couch. And they would, with priests and priestesses praying over them and attending them, they would stay on the couch just dreaming, napping, praying, sleeping, waiting for dreams or visions that would bring healing to them. And they received healing in either two ways. One is they would have, again, what Jung would call a big dream, where they saw the God of healing or one of his helpers or servants or one of his spirit animals, the dog, the snake, or the rooster, come and heal them in the dream, or else give them the prescription for how to heal themselves. This tradition lasted for 2,000 years. We have more than 1,000 testimonies from ancient Greece that have been translated that tell us specific dream healing stories that actually happened. And some of these sanctuaries did have scientific as well as spiritual medicine. Many of them didn't. And there are healings that happen that seems like could have only happened with surgery on a cancer, but there was no surgery and the tumors healed or the projectiles popped out of somebody's body during the dream. So this stuff really works. It really worked in the past, and we practice it when we go to Greece now. So this is the story of one person's incubation. It's a bit long, but it will show you and share what these incubations were like, and then I'll stop and we can have a little discussion. Oh, so that's this too. We set up. This one happened on the coast of southern Crete, but that doesn't matter right now. We the word for the healing sanctuary, the dreaming sanctuary, is Abaton, which meant the place never to be trespassed, never to be misused, only for dreams and visions to try to meet the divine. So we create our Abaton on the upper floor of our quiet hotel facing the sea. Outside, the surface pulses like Earth's breathing. We build altars, light candles and incense, and recite the hymn to Asclepius, and each of our incubants prays for their own visions, and then they go to bed. Okay, the man who you're going to hear about is named Charlie, and he was a younger veteran. He wasn't in combat. He was on our nuclear weapons first strike teams. He had a trauma worse than combat because he was one of the people who, if he had been ordered, was supposed to push the button to start nuclear war. So he had terrible PTSD from that service. And he came to Greece with us to heal it. So Charlie is restless. He can't sleep. His apocalyptic nightmares, which had ceased, had returned a few nights before. He resists sleeping, seeing pyramids in geometric shapes, but he won't allow himself to dream. Then suddenly he does fall asleep and has a vision. He sees himself in an Asclepian sanctuary. He sees himself walking through ruins that are transformed into a rebuilt temple with tall columns, flowing waters, and drenched in flowers. A servant of Asclepius appears and guides Charlie to lie down on the klinikos, the dreaming couch. A snake looks at him. It slithers up his leg until they are eye to eye. It sinks its fangs into his chest. He feels the snake sucking poison out of his heart. He flashes from confusion to delirium to relief. The snake slithers to his face. It becomes huge. It opens its jaws wide and it swallows Charlie. Charlie is inside its belly. Its skin is crusty. He touches it. It breaks open. Charlie crawls out and watches the snake become small and distant. It wraps around a staff. The god of healing appears and the snake becomes his staff while the god's right hand touches Charlie's chest. Charlie closes his eyes, feeling surges of relief. He hears the words, "Someone wants to see you." He consents. He sees Aphrodite, the goddess of love, standing next to Ares, the god of war. And Ares is crying. Asclepius guides Charlie to them. Ares lays his sword and shield down, and Charlie picks them up. Then he puts them down. Aphrodite apologizes and puts her head on his shoulder. The strong light of morning comes through our windows. Waves wash the shore outside. I'm standing at Charlie's feet, awaiting his return. He awakens and looks at me with radiant eyes. Okay. I was sitting with him most of the night, and not only do our seekers have dreams and visions, but also our word therapist actually comes from this tradition. Therapeut, it means a servant or an attendant. So I'm a therapeut of Asclepius. I serve this power and I attend our patients while they're sleeping. And it has taken many years to learn, but now, I hate to use the word, forgive me, but we would say I channel Asclepius. While our dreamers are dreaming, I use active imagination. I go into trance and I have waking dreams where I see Asclepius or other healing powers come to them. So I'm awake, but I'm seeing this happen while they're dreaming, and then the next day I report my dreams to them as well as reviewing theirs, and we see the healing that's come from all of it. So I was Charlie's therapeut for many hours, and I used the active imagination to enter into deep meditation over each incubant. Now, Charlie's an actor, and he used acting for his healing in Greece, in the US. He's really quite an extraordinary actor. We won't discuss that, but theater is affirmed as Charlie's healing tool for transformation of himself and others. So, Aphrodite and Ares, the god powers of love and war, are in conflict in his heart and in his life. And in his dream, he sees them reconciled. He had carried Ares' weapons, but now he's laid them down. The snake cleansed his toxic heart. The healing god led him, and the darkness he had accumulated through service now becomes wisdom that he carries to help heal others. Before this, in the theater of Dionysus, the original place of acting, I wrote in my journal, the thinnest membrane separates the mask of tragedy from the mask of comedy. The grimace and the guffaw are almost the same. Learn to walk on that membrane the way a tightrope walker balances on the wire above the abyss. That was a vision I had in the theater years before, but this time with Charlie that night, I had this vision. I see. The mask, I'm addressing Charlie, the mask of comedy floats over you. It hovers for a time. Then its smile twists into a hideous grimace. It becomes the mask of tragedy. The mask speaks. The parts you wish to play are the parts you have already played. There's nothing you wish to give that you have not already lived. Every part is already you. Know that you know what you think you do not. Then the mask flashes and laughs and flashes between tragic and comic, back and forth. We too, it says, are one and the same. You know this too. The great joke is that there is no joke but the one we play on ourselves. Your loss of everything was to show you this so that you know, and to teach you to never take life as a joke. We are both yours, where each of us use every role you have ever played, never for your own purposes, but always for life's purpose for you. We are yours. Be the director, directed by the director, capital D. Your curls are his. Zeus Asclepius is one, that's all. Charlie said, something extraordinary happened during dream time. It isn't fictitious, it isn't illusory. I feel lucky, joyous, blessed. It is alive, I am well, and I am alive. So, since that time, Charlie has finished his master's degree, continues acting, has brought Greek tragedy to Skid Row in Los Angeles, and runs Greek tragedy in homeless shelters on Skid Row, teaching Skid Row, suffering people on Skid Row, that they too are living heroic, noble, tragic lives and can think of themselves as mythic heroes, and it transforms them too. And he's really alive and well, and his nightmares are no more. So these are just a few of the many ways that we can bring really deep and transformational healing that heals our soul and the wounds in the soul, and that lasts and can carry us through life with vision and healing for all. So I've talked a lot. I could talk all day, but I won't. I'm going to pause now and ask, are there any questions, comments, or sharing anybody wants to do? We have a few minutes for that, and then I will read a closing poem or prayer, and then we'll go next door. And we have a raffle, and we have goodies and books, and we're collecting for our Vietnam charity. So, any questions or comments or sharing anybody would like to offer? Anything from the Zoom people? Anybody have anything they want to say? It's hard. Yes. Nope, okay. Well, so everybody, thank you for listening. There's more information on our website, mentorthesoul.guide, if you want it. What? Our website is Mentor the Soul. That's one word. mentorthesoul.guide. Do you have a question? Oh, wow. Sure. Thank you. The question is, would I please share my turtle story with everyone? We shared it in the social hour before the gathering, and it's really a cool story. And you see my belt buckle? Everybody see I wear a sea turtle belt buckle. Well, our dear friend asked why. So, and I love to share this story. Thank you for asking for it again. So there's a little island called Poros. And thank you to my wonderful agent, Joe Cullen, who got me the contract for this book. And now I'm returning to Greece because he also got me a contract to write a spiritual guidebook to the island of Poros, which is in process, and I'm grateful to you forever. Okay. So this story happened on Poros way back in 1987, the first time I ever went there. When I was in midlife and looking for connection to the cosmos, to the spirit world, because I was hurting and confused at that time. We're always hurting and confused, but it can get lighter. So I was on the island of Poros, and I was there because I was translating the poetry of George Seferis, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1963. He's a great poet, but he's hardly known on this side of the world. And I love his work, and this used to be his retreat island. So I went there. He got me there. I didn't know about the island except that he used to leave Athens to write there. So I went there to finish my translation work, but my life changed. Poros is a small island. There's only a harbor village for about 2,000 people, and then it's an old volcanic mountain that juts out of the sea. And there's a temple, a sanctuary of Poseidon on the top of the mountain. And this was the main sanctuary of Poseidon in the ancient Greek world. It was as big and extensive as the Acropolis in ancient times. Now it's just ruins that haven't been rebuilt and are hardly visited. So that's good. We can be there alone with nature and gods. So I saved my last full day on the island to hike up the mountain. And it was, for us humans, it was a 3-hour hike. So I had my backpack, I'm in Greece, so of course I had tomatoes and cheese and olives and some wine in my backpack for a picnic up on the mountain. And it was a beautiful 3-hour hike with the islands floating on the sea in the distance and through beautiful pine groves and olive groves. Well, I got to the top after 3 hours, and the opening to the sanctuary was maybe 50 feet in front of me, about as far as Reverend Rachel is to me right here. And I saw the opening to the sanctuary, and what came out of that opening but a giant sea turtle. A giant sea turtle like this big, on its flippers, on a mountaintop, walking flipper by flipper right up to me in the path. I stopped in absolute amazement and disbelief. I sat down in front of it, and we both sat there for an hour, staring into each other's eyes. And when the turtle determined it was done with me, then on its flippers, it just walked slowly around me and started to head down the mountain or wherever it was going. And I was amazed and overwhelmed, and I went into the sanctuary and just prayed and prayed and prayed. Turtle was one of the totemic animals, messengers of Poseidon in ancient times. So I felt really, literally welcomed by the powers of the god of the sea to his sanctuary. In addition, it changed my life in so many ways, but this was a huge healing for me and in my work, because that trip in 1987, I went to Greece to study the old citizen warrior tradition of ancient Greece, to learn more about how to effectively help our veterans heal from their war trauma, because we don't know how, but the ancients did. So among other things, Turtle taught me, I think we all know that this continent, by our Native American brothers and sisters, is not called North America. It's Turtle Island. Turtle Island. One of the messages from the turtle was, you left the United States and North America to learn something about how to help warriors. Well, go back to Turtle Island, which I did, and then I urgently spent about a year looking for a Native American elder and teacher to study with, because my life was different and I was told to learn these ways, and so I went and devotedly did. And so Kate and I are also initiated in that tradition. So I went to Greece to find out how to help our warriors come home, and I was told by the god of the sea and the god of healing dreams to go back to Turtle Island and study the ways of the people of Turtle Island to learn how to help our warriors come home. So I use Greece, I use Vietnam, and I use our beautiful Turtle Island earth for these healing practices. So thank you for asking for that story. And you do hear that I do experience miraculous events that we can't explain, but they really happen. Yes, Rev? Mm-hmm. Thank you, yes. Whoever asked that, thank you, yes. Symptom and symbol. We treat symptoms as if they are the problem, as if that's the illness, and then our medical profession mostly tries to erase or control our symptoms. We really are in an era of symptom management. The words psychology, psychiatry, and psychotherapy all come from this tradition. Psyche doesn't mean mind. In ancient Greece, it means soul. It means soul. And logi doesn't mean to study, psychology, to study the mind. Logi is from the word logos, the beautiful ancient word that we can't even translate, but it means something like the order and meaning of the cosmos. So psychology is the order and meaning of the soul. Psychiatry, iatros means doctor. So a psychiatrist is literally a soul doctor, not, unfortunately, as most have become today, a medication dispenser. And psychotherapy is a servant of the soul. In this, Plato even said, this isn't new. We're going back to our ancestors to reclaim the wisdom that we've lost. Plato said, most people mistake consequences for causes. Don't do that. If you look at the consequence, another consequence is going to arise in its place if you only respond to the consequence. Symptoms are consequences. Hippocrates said, I said it earlier, all illness begins in the soul and ends in the body. Symptoms are soul talk. They are the way our bodies and our souls try to communicate when there's no other way, when we don't have the language, when things have become disordered in us, so that something in us is trying to communicate. So when we only treat the symptom, we're not using it as a symbol. We're using it as an actual, a fact and a pathology of its own, when it's, in fact, it's a symbol of what is going on inside our bodies or our souls and being expressed through our bodies. So one easy example is I have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I can take lots of medications just to keep it under control, or I can go deeper and ask how and why has my digestive system become irritated. I can realize that irritability itself is in my core. It's not something wrong with my bowels. It's that, honestly, I have been irritated by very many things my entire life, and I grew up in an irritated and irritable family, and I've inherited so much irritation transgenerationally that that's what's in my body, and that's what my soul is screaming about through the symptoms. So when I work with my heart and my soul, I can improve the condition. If I just take medicine for it, I might control the symptom, but I'm not changing the condition. So symptoms are symbols, and they are oracles trying to really reveal to us what we don't yet see and know clearly, but somehow in our bodies and in our minds we know them. One more clue from the ancient Greek tradition. The word for truth in Greek is aletheia. We all remember Hades, the underworld, where the souls went and they forgot everything. They crossed the river of forgetfulness and they forgot their earthly life. The name of the river was Lethe. Lethe means to forget. So in Greek, aletheia means to unforget. The truth is unforgetting. The truth is remembering what we already know, but we're not talking about it. We're not letting ourselves know what we do. So symptoms are symbols revealing what we have forgotten, and the truth is trying to come out through our body. Thank you for the question. Any others? Yes, Andrew, thank you. You shared what we have been healing journey, and the last two illustrations I think touch on this, but it is more about the healing of others and its own healing of people. The next is the phrase, physician heals oneself. Sure. Yes, thank you. It's a beautiful and important question. Almost every trauma survivor I work with, from war or other forms of trauma, experiences that their wounds are so deep, penetrating, comprehensive, and life-shaping, life-distorting, that as they heal, they develop extraordinary dimensions of wisdom about what causes our afflictions and compassion for anyone else with a similar suffering, and the desire to give back for the healing that they achieve by helping others. So we truly learn, well, we can't help anybody else heal from something we haven't experienced. Healing doesn't come from books. Books can certainly, and even my books. The books give us guidance for how we can work on our healing, but we have to have the experience to heal. And those who have been through significant suffering and ordeal usually want to give back and to make use of the journey, the healing journey they've been through, and to make their own suffering useful to humanity. And so very, very commonly turn around and become helpers and healers, peace activists, servants of humanity afterwards. Also, we learn that we are not separate. We are all one and in one community and made of the same stuff. Back to Vietnam, the Vietnamese, when our veterans ask, "Why don't you hate me? Why aren't you punishing me? Aren't you angry and hurt at what I did?" The Vietnamese will always answer, "No, we're brothers and sisters because we survived the same hell." Or from now on, these are actual quotes from them. From now on, American and Vietnamese veterans must be the lips and tongue of the same mouth telling the world the same story. We all share the common human story, and one of the gifts of suffering is that we can learn that and emerge with big hearts. Carly Simon, there's more room in a broken heart. Our hearts crack open and we've got more room and more surface, and we've learned the hard way what we all suffer together, and we use our healing and the wisdom we've gained to turn back and help our world heal. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, Joe. Yes, yes. The concept of transmission of energy is really important. And my best understanding is that uh, most, maybe all of the spiritual traditions of the world have healing traditions and teach that the masters of those traditions transmit the energy, divine energy of their transmission through their being to their clients and their patients. So in general, that is a healing principle, and it is practiced in many traditions, and in the Greek tradition as well. The people who became therapeutes, servants of not just the God of healing, but of any God, they went through really deep and complicated rituals themselves and had non-normative and visionary experiences such as we're talking about, such that they were initiated into that divine being's tradition and were filled with the energy. So there too, a god or a priest or a priestess or a therapeut of a particular divinity would have practices to fill themselves with that energy and then transmit it to their people and their patients. And they had it through touch. They had it, oh, goodness. The tragedies. Sorry. When we experience Greek tragedy performed in its original way, it is a battery of universal energy transmitting the emotions in the tragedy to us. And also when we go to the oracular sites, you've been there. You know what it feels like. How do we explain how standing at Delphi and being penetrated by that universal energy that is pouring through the place? So people transmit the divine energies, and the sacred places transmit the divine energies. And I'm even in collaboration with colleagues in Greece who are geophysicists who are doing really sophisticated tests of the earth in some of the sacred sites to map and demonstrate I don't even know the words, the geodynamic energy that the earth is putting out that's coming through these sites. It's very different than other places nearby. So people and story and performance and ritual and Mother Earth herself are all transmitting energies to us. Yes, Mary. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there aren't many, but there are a few practitioners on this side of the world who are really looking at the soul as the source of our troubles and reinterpreting our symptoms back to their origins in our soul. And he's one, and there are some others as well. And I'm happy to say that these days I work more commonly with 30 and 40-year-olds who are really, really hungry for this. I'm experiencing the 30 and 40-year-old generations of people who are either looking for healing or younger healers who are really rejecting the mainstream and conventional methodology and looking more and more and more toward spiritual and soulful conditions and practices. So it's slow, but the field is healing and more people are thinking this way. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to read just really quickly 2 closing poems to close in a sacred way, and then please join us next door for some goodies and some talk and some books if you're interested. This is very short. I just want to share this, that My book ends this way, so it's the punchline, but I'm not going to ruin the book because you'll have to find out how I got there. But one journey to Greece, one of the last ones, Kate and I had a wonderful hotel room in Athens that had a huge picture window that looked right up at the Acropolis. So it was like we were sleeping on Athena's porch. Our very last night there, oh, and we left the curtains open so we could look at the Acropolis, or her light could shine on us all night long as we slept. So the very last night of this recent journey there, I had a dream in this bed as we're sitting under the Acropolis. I just heard this sentence. So this was my dream, this one sentence. I am working my land under Athena's gaze to harvest her olives from her sacred grove. So I love that dream, and that was confirmation for me to keep doing this work, and it's connected to the universe, and somehow it's being received and heard. So, closing poem from Vietnam. I wrote this in the Fine Arts Museum in Hanoi, looking at a very beautiful painting called Summer Winds from 1940. But nothing about war, just about our connection to Great Mother Earth and our identity with her. So, Summer Winds. I am a red dragonfly clinging to the swaying stem of a blossoming lotus. I am a speckled frog, content beneath lotus leaves, bending and dripping with rain. I am a broad green leaf, bowing my wide lobes to ripple and kiss the pond. One white petal is torn off by the wind. I am that petal, flying away. So, amen. Thank you very much. Thank you all, friends on Zoom from all over. And thank you, you vast crowd of beloved friends who came to share this event and celebrate with me. Thank you.